Hi, I'm John Rofrano, Senior VAS Trainer here for Boris TV, and welcome to Boris Continuing Complete Training for Final Cut Pro 10. In this episode, we're going to assemble a motion graphic you're currently watching from the Extruded EPS logos that we learned how to make in the last episode. While I'm going to build this from an empty project, I'll be moving pretty quickly, and you should review the previous episode for more in-depth coverage of the basics of BCC Extruded EPS. The fact that we can make such a sophisticated motion graphic right from within Final Cut Pro 10 is a testament to the versatility of the Boris Continuing Complete suite of plugins. They continue to be my go-to plugins. Let's switch over to Final Cut Pro 10 so I can show you how this is done. Now, before we get started, I want to show you what inspired me to create this graphic in the first place. This is the poster for the 2014 International Car Show in New York City. And you'll notice they've got this nice leather in the background and this beautiful start button that you now see in cars. And I just thought it was something that needed a little motion to it. So I came up with this motion graphic by taking some of the exotic car logos and just spinning them around in space and making something a little interesting out of it. The project that we left off at last time, we had just created the Ferrari logo by importing an EPS and then mapping the logo face on top of it. And so I'm going to start with an empty project and show you how to do this for all the logos. I'll start by pressing Command N and start a new project. We'll call this 3D Car Show Demo. And the first thing I want to do is import my assets. So I'm going to go over to Import, and you'll notice I have a number of assets that I've already created, and a lot of them have the 720 after it. Let me go down and show you the original Start button. This is the Start button that I just copied off of that poster and deleted the background in Photoshop. But that's not the one I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one that I inserted into a 720 PNG file because I don't want to have to worry about resizing these to map onto the EPS objects. So it's really important that you do a little bit of pre-planning, understand how big your project is, and bring everything in at the project size, and then you don't have to worry about any kind of resizing. So I need my Start button, I need Maserati, I need that leather background, which I also resized to 720. We'll take the Lamborghini logo. I'll take the Ferrari face 720p, which is again the Ferrari set into the 720 logo. Let me show you the full one. The full one is square. You can see back here, and we don't want the square one. We want this full face one. And the Bugatti logo, and I think that's about it. That should be enough. So we'll import selected. I like to copy these into my library because I go back and forth between my Mac Pro and my MacBook Pro, and I like having everything together. So let's start by taking the background and putting that in. So I'm going to go to my leather background 720 and just hit the W button to bring it in. It normally comes in at the default length of 10 seconds. I'm going to highlight it, press Control D, and make that 30 seconds because we want that to be a 30-second promo. And then I'll hit Shift Z in order to make that the size of my project. Now that I have my background, let's go get something to put the logo on. So I'll go over to my generators, start with my solids, and I'm just going to take a gray solid. We'll just drag and drop it on here. So here's a little grayscale solid, and we're going to import the Ferrari logo on here. So let's select it, go to Effects, and in BCC 3D Objects, there's BCC Extruded EPS, which has multiple material. We'll drop that on, and we'll open up the external file. Now, so let's go to our Ferrari logo outline EPS file, which is just the outline of the logo. We'll bring that in. I'm going to bring this up to 100% so you can see what I'm doing. One of the things I want to do is come down and change the bevel. So I'll scroll down here. Remember, we want back bevels because we're going to spin our logo around. I'm going to increase the extrusion depth to 5. And maybe my bevel amount just to 0.3, just a little bit. And I like my bevels to be convex. So let me bring this way up to 200 so you can see what happens when I change this. Right now I've got a straight bevel on here, and I want to put the convex bevel, and that'll just make it a little bit smoother. So I kind of really like that convex bevel for this particular logo. We're going to use different bevels on different logos. Then to get the Ferrari insignia on here, we'll go to the texture well, click on it, and come over to the Ferrari face. and then we'll apply that to the clip. Now you'll notice these are the same size, right? I put the Ferrari face in a 720 frame, and so now it maps perfectly. So I'm going to apply the clip. Once again, we'll zoom in so you can see what's going on. Actually, 100 would have been enough to show you. What you'll see is, let me go back to turn this just a little bit for you. I'm going to make this 45 degrees on the y-axis. You'll see what's happening once again is the front face is being mapped onto the sides as well, and that doesn't really work with this particular logo. So let me show you how we fix that. We're going to go down to the materials. And instead of using one for all, I'm going to select number 2, which is one for the front and back and one for the side and bevel. And there it is. It's all corrected. Now the way it magically became red and black is because it's using the actual colors from the EPS. So if we go look at the side texture, you notice that the default is to use the file color. So use the colors that I had placed in the EPS. Of course, you can use any color you want. The only stipulation is the sides all become one color. You don't get the dual colors. But then you can go change these to a different color if you wanted it to be another color, and any of the colors in the palette. I happen to like using the file color so that my blacks stay black and the reds stay red. Okay, let's scroll back up to the top here and make this dead on. I'll go back and fit our screen so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to make that 0 and make that 0. So now there's no rotation on it at all. So here's our logo. I think it's a little bit big compared to the other logos. So for this particular one, I'm just going to take the master scale and bring it down a little bit. Okay, now we can add our animation. The way that I timed these was 2 seconds to spin up from the center, 3 seconds to remain on the screen, and then 2 seconds to spin off to the side. So there were 7 seconds per logo. So let's go to the beginning and we'll start animating this logo. Now for the opening, I'd like to move it back in the Z position. So I'm going to create a keyframe for Z and move it back in the Z position, and that pushes it all the way back. Now notice something interesting happening, how it got white like that. Remember from the last episode, there are a set of 3D lights in the environment, and as you move things through the environments, the lights shine on them in different ways. And so by pushing them back, I got the glare of the light here, but that's going to come off as it comes closer. So that Z position is going to start back at about 50, and I'm going to rotate it minus 360 on the Y, and make a keyframe. So now I have a starting keyframe at 0 for the Z position and the rotate. Then I'm going to move the cursor to 2 seconds. And at 2 seconds, I'm going to make the position be 0. So now I have it full on. And we'll make the rotate 0. Now notice after I make the first keyframe, just changing the values creates new keyframes. So now you see we have the logo spinning up nicely. Then we'll go to the 3 second position. Actually, I want to add 3 seconds to 2 seconds, so I want to go to the 5 second position so that it stays on the screen for 3 seconds. So we go to the 5 second position. Now, I want it to go back off into the corner almost, but I don't want to push it back in Z space, because if I push it back in Z space, we're going to get the light effects again, and I don't want those light effects. So I'm going to play a little trick. Instead of pushing back in the Z space, I'm going to change the master scale. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. Your eyes are going to think it's going back from where it came from, but really it's just scaling in 2D. So what I'll do is I'll create a keyframe here at 5 seconds, and we also want to move it in the X and Y position. So I'm going to create another keyframe for the position XY. So those are kind of anchor keyframes. And then I'm going to go to the 7 seconds. So I'm adding 2 seconds to 5 and going to 7 seconds. And at 7 seconds, I want it to come way down, maybe 25% on this one. And let me turn on my title safe area so we can see where we are. Maybe 25%, and I'm going to bring it down on the Y, maybe just 0.1. Actually, I want minus 0.1. I always get that wrong. And maybe 0.69, I think, had it over to the edge. Okay, having done that, we're ready for the light sweep. So I'm going to go back to the 2 second mark. because that's when it first came on the screen. And now I'm going to add the light sweep. So I'll go to BCC Lights. We'll scroll down a bit till we see light sweep. I'll drag and drop that on. And now we'll open up the light sweep. Close Extruded EPS, open up light sweep. And what we're changing is the light center. So I'm just going to move this until it's just above the logo here. And then I'll set a keyframe. And then we'll go to the 5-second mark, which is just before it starts to move the second time. And so now I just want to take that light sweep and move it back down. So I'm just increasing the amount here until the light sweep gets back down. So now we've got our light sweeps. Now let's see how that looks. I'm just going to drag the cursor a bit over here. So it comes, rolls up, and then sweeps across, and then it comes back down to the side. Now notice it's not rotating around when it's coming to the side, so I forgot to add the keyframes for that. So let's go back, open up Extruded EPS, and let's add those keyframes. So I believe at about the 7-second mark. All right, that's when it's rested. So we'll go to 5 seconds because we wanted it to rotate for 2 seconds. So at the 5-second mark, I'm going to go to Rotate Y. I'm going to place an anchor keyframe. I rotate Y. Then I'll go to 7 seconds, and I'm going to make this 360. So it'll do one full turn again. So now let's go preview this. I'm just dragging the cursor across. So now that we have one done, it gets a lot easier. Let me go to Info. Let me name this. So I'm going to call this Ferrari logo. Because we're going to have a bunch of them on the screen and we want to make sure we know which one is which. So that's the Ferrari logo. Now we're going to bring on the next logo, the Lamborghini logo, and I want to do that just as the Ferrari logo is exiting from its fullest point. So that would be at 5 seconds. So I'm going to place my playhead at 5 seconds. Then I'm going to hit Command C and Command V to paste another copy. So what's going to happen is the next one will start coming up. Now you notice that I didn't make the backs transparent. That was intentional to keep the frame rates up, but let me just show you what it's going to look like. So this back will be transparent, and then this one will be transparent, and now you see the both of them on the screen. All right, so once they become transparent, then that light sweep is no longer across the whole background, right? The light sweep is just across the logo, and then you see the next one coming up, right? And they're sweeping in. Now, one thing you'll notice is the next one coming up, you can see it as the one in the background is still up there. So you'll notice that you really need to start building these under each other. So I'm going to drag and drop this one down. So now the second one is coming up from behind it. Okay, so let's go change this logo. I'm going to click on External File, and we're going to take the Lamborghini outline and bring that in. Okay, now let's go down to the image well and get ourselves the right logo. So I'll just delete the Ferrari logo from there and click on the image well, and then click on Lamborghini 720. Once again, set nicely into a 720 frame, apply clip, and I have a Lamborghini logo. Now there's very little I need to do at this point because I already have the animation. All I really need to do is have it spin back to the other side of the screen. So let me change the cursor position here so you can see what's going on. So let's make a few adjustments. You'll notice that there are little arrows on either side of the keyframes when there's additional keyframes on the side. So I'm going to go back in this one. I'm going to go back to the original keyframe. I made it 80% because the Ferrari logo is a little big, but all the rest are going to be at 100. So let me go fix that. So now it's 100%. And then when I get to the next keyframe, where it's in the corner, it's probably more around 30. And then, of course, instead of being in that corner, 0.69, I'm going to make it minus 0.69. And that just shoots it over to the other side. Now, let me rename this Lamborghini. So that's the Lamborghini logo. Now, the Ferrari logo really needs to come across the entire timeline. So I'm going to hit Control D and make this 30. So now we have the Ferrari logo on one side, Lamborghini logo on the other, and we're getting there. So now I want to get my playhead back to just before the Lamborghini logo starts to move, which I believe is right at 10. Let me just, yeah, right there at 10 is where it starts to move. So that's where I want the next one to come in. So once again, I hit Command C to copy this connected clip, Command V to paste another one. It's going to get pasted on top. And so I just want to drag it down to the bottom. And then I'm going to take the Lamborghini logo and extend it all the way out to the end as we work on the next logo. Okay, this time I want to bring in the Maserati logo. I'm going to select a new external EPS file. This time we'll take the Maserati outline and open it. And that's really just an oval. And this one I'm going to go down and clear out the logo and click on the well and then click on Maserati 720 and apply it. So now we've got the Maserati logo, but I'm going to use a different bevel on this one. I'll show you why. I'm just going to get this off to where it starts to turn. Let me bring this up to 200%. It looks like this logo could use a little bit of sculpting, only because of the way the logo is fashioned. And so for this particular logo, I'm going to go down and change the bevel style. I'm going to make the bevel style concave. And I'm going to increase the amount. And I'm going to increase the amount to 1. And this gives it a really nice bevel. I just think it looks better when it's beveled like this. So it will turn this a little bit more. See that? Just a really nice, let me go back a bit. Yeah, it's just a really nice bevel on each side for that one. I just think that the concave bevel looks better for that particular logo. So we're going to make that one concave. And then let's also go back and change where it's going to be placed. So if I go find the next placement keyframe, you'll see that it's right behind the Lamborghini. And so instead of making it go there, I'm going to pick .38 on the other side, maybe .39. Move it over just a little more. So just spreading these out left, right, left, right. Nothing more to do there. So I'm going to come back to where it first starts to rotate off the screen. I believe that's at 15. And then once again, I'll do Command C copy, Command V paste. And we'll scroll up and get that one and drag and drop it down. And let me set this back to 15 so I have an accurate placement and bring it down one more. Okay, so I want to go change the name of this to Maserati logo. And then this last one is going to be Bugatti. Okay, and let's move the playhead over and work on our Bugatti logo. So you know the drill by now. We'll go over and select a different EPS file. The Bugatti outline. Then we'll go down to the texture, and we'll pick the Bugatti texture, and we'll apply it. Now you'll notice something interesting here. The Maserati logo is overlaying the Bugatti logo. We're going to fix that in just a minute. But this is why I had to have logos in front of and behind in this particular graphic. So I'll select the Maserati logo and bring that to the end. And now with the Bugatti logo selected, again, we'll come over to the position keyframes. We'll find that next position. And the last position on Bugatti is where the Maserati was. And since it was 0.39, I'm going to type in negative 0.39. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern here. All right, so positive is anything to the plus of the middle of the screen, negatives to the left of the middle of the screen. So it's a nice, easy way of spacing things out across the screen. Then the last thing I want to put on is the start button. So as you can tell, things are getting kind of sluggish, right? I've got 3 3D objects, they've got extrusions, they've got light sweeps, so it's getting a little slow here. You have to kind of go slowly. All right, I think 20 is where, oops, sorry. I think 20 seconds is where this Bugatti logo starts to move off. Let me just check that. Yeah, it's starting to rotate off right there. So that's where I'm going to have my next cut and paste. So Command-C cut, Command-V paste, and that's going to be my last one. So let me go back to the to 20. And I'm going to scroll up. And this is no longer the Bugatti logo. This is going to be the start button. So we'll rename that the start button. And let's pull this down. All right, I just want to extend this Bugatti logo to the end. And now I've got the last piece here, which is the start button. So let's select it, switch over to video, change the external file. I'm going to use the start button outline EPS, which is basically just a circle. And all of these logos I got off the internet. So there's nothing special here. Right? I found all of these on the internet, and I just modified them a little bit to create outlines of the logos rather than have all the detail in them. And I showed you that in the last episode. So let's go down to the face and change that. Click on the image well. Click on the start button 720. Apply it. And reselect the clip. Now for the start button, I'm going to do something a little different at the end. I'm just going to have it spin in space. And it's a little bit high right now, so we're going to change its position on the Y just a little bit. I want to bring it just a little down. That looks good to me. However, I don't want that to be keyframed, so I'm going to go delete this keyframe. So let me go find the other keyframes. And I'm going to delete that keyframe. And delete the last keyframe. So I don't want any keyframes on start. I just want start to naturally be a little bit lower than the rest. I think that'll be fine. So now let me go back to the beginning here. So start begins at 20. So there's going to be 2 seconds before it comes up at 22. And it comes straight out at us. We're going to let it sit for 3 more seconds. So at 25 is the next place that we're going to want something to happen. And at 25 is where we're going to start doing the rotations. So let's go to the next rotation keyframe here. So here's the keyframe at 0. I'm going to go to the next keyframe. And instead of making it 360, I'm going to make it 180. I'm going to delete this master scale keyframe because I don't need it. So we'll get rid of the master scale keyframe. Then at 28, I want it to still be 180. So we got it at 0, then 180, then the next one is 180, and then at 29, then at 29, I'm going to change it to 360. So what it'll do is it'll just sit there and keep spinning. Now, one more thing I want to change on here. Let's get it to where you can actually see the edge. Okay, let's zoom in on that one. I think that'll show you what I want to do. So right here, I want to change the bevel on this one. And on this, I want to use a straight bevel. So I'm going to use the straight bevel. And let me turn it just a bit so you can see what's going on here. There you go as it comes around. You see it's got that nice straight bevel on it. I just think that looks a little bit better. That makes it look a little bit more like I think that push button should look. Now I might just come to that master scale and make the button a little bit smaller. I really don't want any keyframes on the master scale because we're not really. So I'm going to reset the parameter, and then I'm going to make this, I think I want to make this 180 as well. And that just makes the button a little smaller. Now it sits in there really nicely. Okay, so now I think we have all the elements in place. You get the nice light sweep, and then it's just sitting and spinning. Okay, now we're set for the finishing touches. Let's start with the title. So I'll go to Titles, and we're just going to take a basic title. Let me get to the beginning of the clip, and I want to attach that title. So I'm going to press Q, and that title had got attached way up at the top. So we're going to bring it down because we want it to be below all of these others. So I'm going to bring it down. We'll drop it. Press Control D and make it 30 seconds for the duration. Now let's go add the text. So I'll go over to Text. And this is going to say New York International Auto Show. Except with auto spelled correctly. So let's go to a place where we can put this on quite easily. I'm noticing a bit of lag because we've got so much going on the screen. So now we have New York Auto Show. Let's change it to a nice font. I think Impact is probably what I want to make this because that's a great, it looks similar to the font I think they probably used. We'll scale it up a bit. And let's put on our title safe area so we see where we are. Okay, I'm going to move this up. Here we go, that's centered. Maybe make it a little bigger, maybe a 120. I'm liking it. And then we'll turn off our title safe. So now we've got the auto show and it's under everything. If you just move the playhead, we can see that everything is coming above the auto show. The next thing I want to add is the smoke. And the smoke can be above or below the title. It doesn't matter. I'm going to stick it below the title. So let me get back to the beginning of the timeline. And I'll go to Effects and then BCC Particles. And you're not going to have this effect. This is white cloud fly through. You're not going to have it because I created it by going into Motion and using the Particle 3D to create the white cloud fly through. And in fact, it's one of the presets in Particle 3D. So in a future episode, very soon, I will show you how to go into Motion and create your own presets for the Boris Continuum Complete plugins that then show up under the effects with all the other BCC effects. So I need something to put the white cloud fly through on. Let's go back and get some more media. I'll get another gray solid and we'll drop it in here. And Control D to make that 30. And now we can come back and drag and drop the white cloud fly through on here. There we go. There are the white clouds. Now I'm going to go to the Info tab and just rename this white cloud fly through. Just so we know what it is. We'll go to the Video tab and let's bring it down a bit. So what I did was I went into Motion and took one of the presets in there, which is the white cloud fly through, and I exposed some of the parameters, and that's what I'll show you in a future episode, how to expose the parameters so that I can manipulate them here. They were just my favorite parameters that I thought I might like to use, and really I think all I want to do is just position this a little bit lower. So I'm going to go on the Y and just move the smoke down a bit. That's a little bit too much. Let's do 0.05. That's probably good right there. And then I believe what I did was I made it a little less opaque. So let me click on the clip, press Control V, double click on opacity, and just bring it down. I think I used something like 60% or 50% thereabouts. I didn't want it to be too much. That's looking just about right. I'll hit Control V again to close that. Now, you might say, why did I add the clouds, right? And you might think, well, cars, burnout, smoke. Well, that would be a good reason. However, I did it for a very different reason. When I saw the Ferrari logo without the clouds, let me click on the clouds. I'm going to hit V to hide them. Without the clouds, you can't see Ferrari. So I needed an element in here that could lighten the background. And I tried white drop shadows, I tried a bunch of things. And then I said, hey, what if I put these clouds behind it? It really punches up the Ferrari. So I actually did it only for the Ferrari logo, and it doesn't look too bad for the rest of the stuff either. So now that we've got the white clouds, now we can figure out what needs to be in front of the clouds and behind the clouds. So if I look at where Ferrari is, once it starts to go back in space, we're just going to click. Once it starts to go back in space, the next logo comes up. And then you really want Ferrari to be down behind the clouds at that point, right at that 7-second mark. So I'm going to come up to the top where Ferrari is. Let me scroll up. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to press B to get my blade tool. And I'm going to split the clip right there. Press A again. And I'm going to take the Ferrari logo and drag it down below the clouds, the cloud fly through. So let's drag it down. So now it's behind the clouds. I'm going to go do the same thing with Lamborghini. So remember, these logos are on the screen for 7 seconds, 2 seconds spinning up, 3 seconds on, and 2 seconds spinning off. And so since it's already on, we're going to spend 3 seconds on and 2 seconds off. That means in another 5 seconds, that should be behind the cloud. So I'm going to add 5 to 7, I get 12. So at 12 seconds, I should go split Lamborghini and put it behind the clouds. So I'm going to select the Lamborghini logo, B for the blade tool, click the split, and then press A again. And now we can drag the Lamborghini logo down. And I'm going to put it on top of the Ferrari logo. So I'm going to stack them in the opposite direction, coming this way. We're going to do the same thing for the Maserati logo. I'm going to add 5 to 12, get 17. And at 17, that Maserati logo should be behind the clouds, but look at what's happening. It's sitting on top of the Bugatti logo. So there's a little problem there. With this one, the size of the logos are such that I just have to move them a little bit earlier. So let's come a little bit earlier here. Okay, and I'm just going to go frame by frame and find a good frame to push them behind each other. So you're seeing in real time how long it's taken my MacBook Pro to render all this graphics. I think I'm getting close. That's probably where I want it to be behind. So I'm going to back up one frame. Okay, that's where I want to split the Maserati logo. So let me come here, beef the blade tool, click to split, press A again, and now I'm going to drag the Maserati logo down, put it on top of the Lamborghini logo. You see how important it is that I started to name these, right? You can imagine if all of these just said gray, you wouldn't know which one is which. So it's important to name your clips so that you know which one is which. Now let's look at what happens. So see how nice it is? Now the Maserati logo is behind the Bugatti logo at the appropriate point. So that one we had to cut a little bit differently. But for the next cut point, we should be able to add 5 to 17 and get us there. And so that would be 22. So let's go to 22. And now all 4 of my logos are behind the smoke, behind the clouds, where I want them. And I just have the start button. So let me turn the skimming on just temporarily and we'll take a peek at some of this. Really hard to render. Lots of stuff going on, the smoke, the logos, but just kind of skimming through it so you can see. I like the way the edge on this Maserati is just great. I think it was good that one kind of scalloped it in a little bit. You know, use your best judgment to try to figure out how these would look if they really were extruded. And then the Bugatti, and then when we get to the start button, we have a nice straight beveled edge on start. You hear it starting to turn here. There we go. So all that's left to do is rendering. This was a pretty intense and complex project because there was a lot of 3D objects spinning and having light sweeps going across them, and it really took a lot of processor power. But even with all that's going on, BCC Extruded EPS did a fantastic job of making this 3D motion graphic look great, and everything was done right inside of Final Cut Pro 10. Who says you can't composite inside of Final Cut? Hopefully you learned enough to do some nice motion graphics with BCC Extruded EPS in your next project. If you have any questions, visit us on borisfx.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. Until next time, this is John Rofrano for Boris TV. Thanks for watching.